All right, I'm gonna do a book review for Judo Gene LeBell. His autobiography was called "The Godfather of Grappling." I first heard about Judo Gene LeBell about I want to say about 2005, 2006, around there, and I saw an ad for a book of his in some kind of I want to say like a martial arts magazine, and it always stuck to me like, who was he? Because it was saying that basically like he was this Hollywood stuntman, and that I mean, yeah, I mean they were saying he's like one of the toughest guys ever, and I mean I never heard of him up until that point, so I just always wanted to like dig deeper and find out who he was. And he died last year, and that had a big impact on the martial arts community. That like a legend died, and all right, I have about at some point I had all of his books, but this one's just for his autobiography. And all right, where do I begin? Gene LeBell had he had like a sense of humor to him, but you could tell he came from old Hollywood because his sense of humor, it's really clean humor, and it reminds me of like Red Skelton or Shecky Green or some kind of comedian that was big like in the 60s or 50s or something. And it sticks out like a sense of humor. I mean, like, it's not like haha funny, but you get the jokes, you know what I mean? That's what I like about him. And it starts off like his mom owned like this big gymnasium. This big gymnasium. His mom is in the Boxing Hall of Fame because she was a boxing promoter. That's all she ever did with her life was just boxing. And for whatever reasons, she always tried her hardest to keep Gene's biological father away from him. She didn't want him talking to his dad. And that always just got to him until, I mean, much later in life, he was already a full grown man when he finally discovered who his dad was. Like, and, but we'll get started. Like, as a child, he was always like getting into trouble. By that, I mean, like, he was always doing like some dangerous, like, stuntman stuff when he was a little kid. And, like, all the other athletes just always looked out for him and stuff because they knew who he was. And let's see here. But yeah, he was always running around the gymnasium, climbing to the top of it and hanging up in the rafters as a child, and he wasn't even scared or nothing. He just randomly did that. Um, as a young man, he went to the Coast Guard. I think it was the Coast Guard or the National Guard, but I'm pretty sure it's the Coast Guard. And this is the only part to the book that actually like kind of broke my heart. Like he tried his hardest to not go to war. It was either the Korean War or World War II, but I'm pretty sure it was like the Korean War, and he didn't go. And he had an education, like I guess because he knew he couldn't finish, like he didn't have the patience to go through like college, so he went to like a trade school, and the Coast Guard paid for that. And he went to school for like agriculture. He thought it was going to be something really simple to like be a farmer, but instead they gave him this giant book full of all these like state laws and national laws, and all these tests he had to pass were like by the book. And he's like, man, dude, farmers got to go through all this? Yeah, they do. And around that time when he was like around like early 20s, he had he had learned judo, and he went to Japan to go test out to get his black belt because he had been doing judo for all these years and stuff. And the grandmasters, they didn't take him seriously. They call in Japan the outsiders, the white man, they call them gaijins or something like that. And he knew like right off the bat that his gut instinct just told him he's not going to get that black belt no matter what. And they just let him like just practice all day. They were just like tossing each other around and just practicing judo. And the day came that he had to go get his go test out for the black belt, and somehow his martial arts uniform, it got tossed in with some red clothing or something. His whole martial arts uniform turned pink instead of white. And everybody looked at him like, is this some kind of sick joke? Like, why is he wearing a pink uniform? That's why you see these pictures of him wearing that pink uniform like he never got over that. And I mean, what else could he do? If all of his uniforms were pink, he had to pick out, I guess, the least pink one, but they were all equally pink. Maybe they sabotaged him. Maybe that's what it was. They probably did that to spite him. And so, of course, he tried his hardest to get that black belt. They wouldn't give it to him. And he didn't take it personally. He just kind of just went back to America. And sooner or later, he did open up his own dojo, like his own judo dojo. And what's it called? He had a lot of celebrities get a black belt, like earn it from him. Chuck Norris got a black belt. He has several from all sorts of martial arts, but he got a black belt from Judo Gene LeBell for judo. And who else? I think Roddy Piper as well. Basically, he was a Hollywood stuntman, and one of his big claims to fame is that like everybody from old Hollywood had at least like one fight scene with him. Anybody you could think of: Bruce Lee, Elvis Presley, Arnold Schwarzenegger, this guy, that guy. He had been like a stuntman in all these like famous movies. I've seen him in a couple. And so basically he has always been in and out of Hollywood like as a stuntman. And I want to say that Cliff Booth from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was kind of inspired, like they kind of drew some inspiration from Judo Gene LeBell's character. Brad Pitt's character was kind of based off of Judo Gene LeBell somewhat. Around that time, Judo Gene LeBell had met up with Bruce Lee. I mean, not Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali. He met up with Muhammad Ali, and he was a pro wrestler at the time, and Muhammad Ali met him like in his mom's gym, and he's like, just in case like boxing don't work out, he wants to be a pro wrestler. And he was asking Gene LeBell, so how long would that take, like for him to like learn how to wrestle and learn like all the customs and traditions and stuff. And Gene LeBell told him the truth of like it's going to take a couple years, and nothing's really guaranteed. And they sat in an audience watching like a pro wrestling event, and Classy Freddie Blassie was wrestling that night. And one thing that Muhammad Ali really liked was like, he asked Gene LeBell, so why do all the villain pro wrestlers bleach their hair white like Classy Freddie Blassie, like Ric Flair and Gorgeous George? And Gene LeBell told him that's just like some tradition they got, that the villain wrestler paints his hair like that, like bleaches it white. And like he saw like how fascinated Muhammad Ali was with Classy Freddie Blassie. Like he drew a lot of heat. He drew a lot of like boos and cheers and stuff. They really loved him. They really recognized him. And he saw that like he got on the microphone. He started doing like this weird rap song, and he would like to think that that's where Muhammad Ali got the idea to like do a bunch of like He would just do a bunch of rap songs here and there when he was cutting promos and stuff himself. Um, I forget who it was, but one time Muhammad Ali had a boxing match and he's walking to the ring, and you see in the background, like with his managers and stuff, and you just see Classy Freddie Blassie just there in like the locker room with him, like in the backstage area. I thought that was pretty neat. Um, when Muhammad Ali had that weird pro wrestling match with Antonio Inoki, I think Judo Gene LeBell was the referee for that match. So I think that's pretty neat that he never forgot him. And then there was no MMA back then, like in the 60s and 70s. It was all just the only game in town was pro wrestling. That's all you had. And Gene LeBell would go to Japan a lot to go tour. And in Japan, like the pro wrestling is way different than here in America. Over here in America, it's like really slow motion compared to the stuff they got over there. Over there in Japan, they actually do wrestle. They actually do like submission moves instead of just like singing and dancing and strutting around and stuff. And Gene LeBell would always like stay in shape like that. He would constantly be running like, they call it road work. In boxing, they call it road work when you're just running miles and miles. Then he was like such an encyclopedia of submission holds that promotions, like pro wrestling promotions, they would keep him like a secret weapon. Like if they needed to teach a lesson to like some pro wrestler that his ego's getting carried away or whatever, they'll stick him in the ring with Gene LeBell, and Gene LeBell would like really knock the hell out of him, like real crazy. And the guy cut it out and learned his lesson. They call that a carpenter or something like that, or a policeman. The wrestler that actually knows like submissions and stuff. And then one time he went to Japan, and I guess one of his friends, like one of his pro wrestler friends, drank too much, and he scooped out a fish out of the aquarium and just swallowed it whole in front of everybody. And when he got the check for the night, they tacked on about an extra $300-400 because that's how much that fish was worth. And he was mad, but he didn't pay it. The guy that swallowed the fish, he had to pay that money. Came out of his pocket. And he said that one time he went to go tour in Japan, and like his third or fourth wife, ex-wife or whatever, I guess her new husband didn't work out, and he let her stay in his house while he went to go work in Japan. When he got back home, all of her stuff was inside of his house. So she moved back in thinking they could just pick up where they left off. I thought that was pretty neat. Let's see here. But that was his whole career, like just pro wrestling. And I remember like Panther Productions. They were this martial arts company that would make like home videos. They wouldn't sell you the whole set, or if you could afford it, you could buy the whole set, but they would try to sell you VHS tapes one at a time. You could pay like $40-50 now for one volume, then another $40-50 for the next, and so on and so forth. And in the 80s, Judo Gene LeBell made a home video set of like three different what's it called, like study courses on submission holds and stuff. I want to say it was him and either Mondo Guerrero or Hector Guerrero, one of the Guerreros. And I thought it was really neat that I guess like in California, I forgot, I guess he was the promoter, so he would give a fair chance to everybody. It didn't matter what your race was. You could be black, Mexican, whatever, he'll let you wrestle on TV. So he gave a lot of opportunities to like Mexican wrestlers to be like on TV. I thought that was really neat. And then um, in the early 80s, whenever Vince McMahon Jr. finally bought the WWE from his dad, Senior, Vince McMahon Senior, like, they say that he would just, like, run you out of your town, but there was maybe, like, three pro wrestlers that he respected enough to, like, cut him some kind of deal. It was Jack Tooney, Stu Hart, and Judo Gene LeBell. So he gave Judo Gene LeBell some kind of deal where, like, he could keep his pro wrestling promotion, and Vince McMahon would kind of respect him enough to, like, not be goofing off, like, next to him, and, like, in his hometown and stuff. So I thought that was really cool of him, and that's how much respect that Judo Gene LeBell had. And what else happened? In his book, he has pictures with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and I thought that was really neat. Like, The Rock never forgot his roots either. Um, I want to say, like, the beginning of the early 2000s, that he finally found out who his dad was. And I don't think he met him, but he got to go visit his gravesite. And the biggest, like, ironic twist, his dad had a pink headstone. So, like, he always thought maybe, like, the ironic thing was, I mean, he had a pink martial arts uniform, but his dad had a pink headstone. Like, he always thought that really, like, was some kind of coincidence that, like, that was, like, his trademark thing, that he always wore a pink martial arts uniform. Um, you see all these photos of him wearing that pink martial arts uniform. When he would go down to the ring with Ronda Rousey, like when she would wrestle in, I mean, no, she was fighting in the UFC at the time, and you would see Judo Gene LeBell, like, in Ronda Rousey's corner. And I don't think he trained her to go to the Olympics, but I mean, she trained with Judo Gene LeBell. There's one thing that kind of got me mad about the book, that I was hoping that he would talk more about his friends, because I never really, like, I never really understood, like, his whole relationship with his partner, that young man. Well, compared to him, he was young. Gokor Chivichian. Gokor Chivichian, he calls it Hayastan grappling. And I had one of his DVDs, and in it, there's like a clip. There's like some little 5-minute interview with Gene LeBell. And he said some kind of joke, but you couldn't really, like, it's kind of hard to tell if he was telling the truth or not. But he was saying, like, he owns a gym, but he just, like, he would rather have people kind of, like, training with Gokor instead of, like, him, really, because it's hard for him to keep up. He's so old now, and it's kind of weird to describe, like, the thing he said. But um, one thing that Gene LeBell always did, like, for you to actually be a student in his class, he has to get you in a triangle choke and knock you out. And then part of the joke is, like, he's sitting, like, on your chest, and he's got, like, your wallet. He has your wallet in his hand, and he's just there, just kind of laughing at you. The whole class is laughing at you, because part of his theory was, like, when Roddy Piper did it, he said that, like, for you to understand how a knockout, like a triangle choke is, you have to live through it. You can't just be, like, doing that. And just Gene being, like, it's not mean spirited, but it was just his sense of humor, that he did that. A lot of, like, the old school pro wrestling teachers, when you go to their school, like, if they decide to hold a camp or, like, a seminar or something, they would purposely, like, injure you on purpose. That way, like, if you go to a bar that night or something, you'll tell them, like, I mean, it's kind of like all that pro wrestling stuff is fake, but they want you to say, like, well, I got seriously injured. It's kind of this weird tradition they have, but they're trying to make sure that you respect the sport and stuff. Um, I seen Gene LeBell in movies here and there. I saw him a few times on Married with Children. Like he was, I remember when Al Bundy had like this wrestling match with this really big woman, like in Las Vegas, and Gene LeBell was the referee. Um, but yeah, that's one of those things that got to me about that book that he didn't talk about Gokor Chivichian too much. Um, I would like anytime I had a chance to really like buy a DVD or a book or something with him in it, I took that chance. And I used to have this one seminar. He comes out for about 5-10 minutes. He does like a long armbar, and he was telling jokes, and then he says that he's legally blind, but he's still just like judo is his whole life. And I think that's pretty neat, you know. Um, I liked it. It was like kind of hard to get through the book because of his weird sense of humor, but it was pretty neat. I mean, I respect a lot of his story he said about being from old Hollywood and just his whole life in martial arts. And everybody has a different opinion about him. I've seen very few people that really hated him. I didn't understand that. I guess they just didn't like really believe him or something or other. But it is what it is, man. They just probably got weird information off of like some chat room or some message board or something. They just misunderstood it. And uh, I think he had a daughter. He was really close to his daughter. His daughter was an FBI agent. Um, but yeah, he had a pretty fascinating life. But yeah, it's kind of hard to get your hands on that autobiography. But if you ever get a chance to read it, go right ahead, man. It might take you a while, but I really liked it. And then at the end of the book, he has like a list of like all these movies and shows and stuff that he appeared in, like in the background and stuff. Um, I saw him in the background. He was like an extra in that movie Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I remember that. I saw him on a subway train. I think like in the second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. Excuse me. I saw him in that movie Beer Fest. He was just like some random guy drinking a beer. And excuse me. Well, don't forget to hit like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.